This conference will now be recorded.
Hello and good evening from Washington, D.C., and welcome to the fourth episode of our NSHSS Global Student Voices series. I'm Kolby. We're going to be talking tonight, having a conversation. I have myself here, and we have Greyson in the other Washington. Depends what Washington you think is better. I have obvious opinions here, but Greyson and I are going to be having a conversation just about our experience with NSHSS, what we do outside of NSHSS, how we met, and answer a few questions from NSHSS ambassadors and some that have been submitted from our HQ team in Atlanta. So let's get into it. First, let me introduce my co-panelists. This is Greyson Hoye. He is an undergraduate student majoring in global studies, history, and German, because 1 and 2 majors was not enough. On top of that, German was not enough, so he's also minored in French. He is a Regent Scholar. I don't know what that is, but it sounds really fancy. He has international experience in Germany, Northern Ireland, France, and hopefully gets to go to Greece very soon, so we'll talk about that. He has some campaign work on his resume, but most importantly, and why he's here tonight, is he's the EVP, the Executive Vice President of the NSHSS Student Council Executive Board. So Greyson, you and I have talked, but I'm excited to be here with you tonight.
Yeah, so hello everyone, I'm Greyson, as Kolby said. Kolby is our Fellows Executive Board Vice President. He works at an international public affairs firm in DC, the other Washington, and this firm manages several global clients, including the Embassy of the United Arab Emirates in DC. He also has worked closely with YPFP, Young Professionals in Foreign Policy, which is a group that seeks to bring together like-minded young people in DC and abroad, getting them interested in global politics and affairs. So it's an honor to be with you this evening, Kolby.
Yeah, I'm stoked. Thank you for the YPFP plug. I did notice the other Washington comment. We're going to have that debate later. But let's get to our first audience question. So the first question is from Faith Langston, who is an NSHSS ambassador. Faith, hello, thank you. And the question was, how do I become an NSHSS fellow? Why should I become a fellow? What kinds of opportunities would I have? As the resident fellow on the call, I will take this. So the Fellows Program, really quick, is sort of the alumni council for NSHSS. It is consisted of NSHSS members who have graduated from college. They've started their professional career. So that's me, having started my career 5 years ago. It's been 5 years. That's crazy. But we are still interested in being involved and wanting to give back. And I think there are opportunities to do so. So one of those is doing a webinar like this with student council members, with ambassadors, and with other students who are interested about the organization. The NSHSS team also calls upon us to help at conferences and events. We're not having those right now, but so that's why we're doing this right now. But I've definitely had the opportunity to travel across the country, go present workshops, introduce speakers, moderate panels, and that's really all thanks to NSHSS. So being a fellow is about service. It's about giving back to your NSHSS experience, and it's been a wonderful time. I think we're going to talk about that a little bit more later, but that's kind of the quick and dirty there. But before you become a fellow, there is this group called the Student Council, which is our collegiate level of tiered membership. And Greyson is he's the EVP there. So I'm gonna let him talk about what it means to be a student council member.
Yeah, thanks, Kolby. So as Kolby said, the Student Council is kind of our college level tier of NSHSS, and it's about 600 at this point, out of however many 1.6 million members that we have worldwide. In a nutshell, the Student Council helps with member engagement, really connecting to our ambassadors and our student members, being there at events and doing events like this online in this crazy season that COVID has brought upon us. But really just helping put NSHSS out there, demonstrating that you can be a member for as long as you wish of NSHSS. It's not just for high schoolers, it's also for college and beyond. So it's been a great experience for me. I joined the executive board this past January, and it's just been great to literally interact with people across the globe, from Sweden to China and everywhere in between. And it's definitely been an experience being part of that.
Yeah, that's a great great, succinct kind of description of like all that NSHSS has to offer. So we have some questions, which actually this next question is going to relate to kind of what we're talking about here. And Greyson, I thought like we would go back and forth. Like I'll ask this question, you go, I go, then maybe you ask the next question. We'll go back and forth and just kind of see what happens here.
Sure.
We'll keep it casual. Okay, so how has NSHSS directly impacted your kind of college life and experience? You touched upon it, but maybe you have like a special memory that's happened recently. Maybe it's meeting your new college council, which I will say, big kudos to the NSHSS team in Atlanta. This is like a revamped college council. It's really exciting to see. I know they're getting more involved. So over to you.
Yeah, well, I joined NSHSS in my senior year of high school, and at the time, I really didn't know too much about it, and that was my bad for not really researching it. But I remember at my high school graduation that there was another guy who was part of NSHSS, and he was wearing the stole that you can get in the gift shop. Go check it out. And and I just remember, I was like, oh, I'm part of this, and it really kind of got my gears, my mental gears turning on what it meant to be an NSHSS member and what that represented, and the image that we could extend to non-members and just in our own academic communities. So as I've moved on to college, NSHSS has provided me through scholarships with various opportunities to travel and to study in other countries. As Kolby mentioned, Northern Ireland and Germany are two of those countries, and that's just really enriched my development both as a student, but also as I think a global citizen as well. Just being able to go out of your comfort zone, go outside the United States, as great as it is, just seeing what other people and other cultures, how they operate is fascinating, and I think I am forever indebted to NSHSS for helping that become a reality.
Excellent, nice. Really glad to hear. I will raise you how much I was not involved in NSHSS until way too late in life. I was a high school member. I joined as a member probably my junior year, so that would have been 2009. Yeah, I'm older than you guys. So I didn't do anything with it. Like I don't think NSHSS was big at my high school at the time, and it's just insane to see how big this network has grown. It's very impressive, and that's big kudos to the team. In college, I didn't really do anything with NSHSS as well. I got the newsletters. I saw the tips that they were putting out for how to succeed in college, how to think about internships. They were helpful resources, but I did not go beyond that involvement. So I was not part of the student council like some of my colleagues were that are now fellows. But when I moved to DC in 2015, I'm from California originally, so I am from the West Coast. We can bond over that. But I moved to DC where I knew I wanted to be, and I was starting to work, but I didn't really have like many networks. I didn't know anyone. I didn't know anyone here, and I was looking for things to do. I was looking for an opportunity, a path to practice my leadership, which so many of our NSHS members are great leaders on their campuses. So it's just like this thing you want to keep doing. And NSHSS emailed me and they said, hey, we have this opportunity with the Fellows program. I had no idea what it was, but I applied, got a phone call from my really good friend now, Lauren, who's on our Fellows board. We went through like a series of 3 interviews, and that's history. So that's since 2015. It's been 5 years with the Fellows board, and it's been absolutely incredible. But I think for me, it shows just how much your membership is truly a lifetime membership, right? Like you pay your membership fee up front, but it lasts for life. I'm 28, I'm working, and I still am very in touch with the NSHS community, which is so cool. I like I said before, at these conferences, I got to present, I think 2016, my first Scholars Day, because I hadn't gotten to go as a student, but as a fellow, I got to go and do a professional development workshop in front of 300 students. And like, boy, was I nervous because I hadn't really done a professional workshop in front of that many people, but NSHSS, like, let me do that. And the next year, 2018 Scholars Day, which I'm repping with this merch here, I got to, moderate my first panel with NSHSS in front of 2,000 something people with on stage was, the head of CIA's talent acquisition, was a colonel from the U.S. Army, was a trial attorney from Texas who worked for the state Supreme Court. But it was a surreal moment where NSHSS had given me the opportunity to interact with these really awesome individuals who I've stayed in touch with, and now we're getting coffee here in DC because a lot of them are based here. So I really think like, and I talk to Morgan, our fellows president, about this all the time. NSHSS really is about what you put into it. And if you are involved and you like truly dive into the network of friends that you're going to make, it reaps its benefits again and again and again. I can keep talking about it, so we'll move on.
So our next question, what is one thing you did to get where you are today that you would suggest to everyone? I'll go ahead and take a swing at that. I think for me, I'm a person who, I won't say control freak, but I will say that I do really like to have things ordered and neat and tidy. So when I got first semester on college campus, and I was going to be, you know, a poli-sci major, political science, and that's what I was going to be. I was going to work in state government, things like that, and I soon learned that life can take you on different journeys, and that's, I mean, how I got to NSHSS in the first place. But I learned in how I got to majoring in global studies and getting this whole wider focus was just being open and allowing things to happen that I didn't expect. So I think that's something I would recommend, just being open to things that may not make sense right in the moment. But just seeing like, hey, I may not be interested in this, but it's a learning opportunity. And that has opened up so many doors, kind of sparking my interest in studying in other countries and working in diplomacy as I do. So just being open to new opportunities, no matter how strange they may look at first glance.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think I'm glad you figured that out already now, because it's something that I did not figure out until probably last year. I definitely, I think like you, a planner, very organized, 5-year plan, 10-year plan, 15-year plan, a little bit too much planning. And I think that helps. I think it helps to have a guide point, North Star, whatever you want to call it, so you have an idea that you're chasing. But I think what I've recently learned, particularly in my like professional career so far, so I've had 3 different jobs in DC. They've all been very different. They've all been very interesting. But the job I have now, I would not have known about, would not have fallen on upon if I had not like kept my peripheral open. Like it's not something that was part of any planning. And it was something I ran into by complete accident through volunteer work, through YPFP, which you mentioned, Young Professionals in Foreign Policy. But I think that's a true testament. Like if I had followed the plan per se, I was about to take a job with a nonprofit and it checked all the boxes, it would have taken me back to California twice a month. It made sense. It was the safe bet. It seemed like it fit into the master plan. And I walked away from that to do this job, which it was so far, you know, I'm still very early in this career, but like it's been a year now. A week from now will be my 1-year mark with this group. It's been the most challenging job I've had. It's been the most rewarding. I've had like good managers. I get to own the projects. I've got to travel internationally. I get to study and learn a culture that I had like really not dug into. It's been fantastic, but I would not have happened if I hadn't, I think, taken the leap and been open to something that I normally wouldn't consider. So I kind of hopped on your answer. I think the one other thing I've learned, something I guess I would impart is learning from failure and embracing failure, and that's tough to do. I'm not a traditional college student per se. Like Greyson, I may have shared this with you, but maybe not. I don't remember now. But I'm what I call myself a double reverse transfer. Like I, out of high school, went to my dream school, got into Georgetown University. It's where I wanted to be. I knew I wanted to be in DC. Georgetown was the best IR school that I could find. Got in, went, absolutely failed. Like flunked 3 of my classes my second semester. And it's not because I couldn't do it. I was a good student. I just didn't. I was so spread out. I was trying to be president of the freshman class. I was trying to run the MUN club. I was trying to run the Student Activities Commission. I was traveling for mock trial, like just doing way too much. Trying to take Arabic and Spanish at the same time at 8 a.m. Like bad choices. Don't do any of that. All you high school students, don't do what I did. But it really took me to fail, literally fail. And I had to come back home. I had to go to community college for 2 years. Never thought I would go to community college. Absolutely the best thing for me. Love community colleges, completely believe in the mission. my like swan song, plan is to be a president of community college one day at the end of my career. Like that's the plan, to give back. And from those 2 years of community college, like really recentered myself, regretted myself, got my grades to be very good, and was able to transfer to a 4-year from UCI, which I graduated from. And I ended up back in DC anyways, because I knew that's where I wanted to be. But that experience of failing really was a humbling experience, and it taught me, I think, tenacity. It taught me grit, and those experiences have really served me well when confronting circumstances in the workplace today. So there's me. Let's move to the next question. So Greyson, what is one thing you regret not doing? It's a good broad question. So,
Yeah.
feel free to lay out all your mistakes, for the world right now.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Well, I think hopefully this isn't a bad answer, but I think it's when I get asked this question, it's almost hard for me to answer it because I have been trying the past few years really not to view things as regrets, but I mean, like you were saying, Kolby, taking failure as an opportunity to grow, to correct mistakes. So a regret, I wouldn't say per se, because I just think everything happens for a reason, even the failures in our lives. But perhaps not regret, but I think things that I wish I could go back and correct. Well, I guess that's regret. Okay.
Good answer.
Yeah, things like could go back. I think maybe just more being in the moment. I mean, it's a real balance. Honestly, being someone who has goals, wants to do certain things, and the industry that you're in, the industry that I want to go in, global politics, IR. It's not for those who sit on their laurels. But I think it is living in the moment, in the sense taking the opportunities to rest, to not just say, okay, I am a junior in high school, I need to have my life planned out, but rather just enjoying that. And there are so many of my friends who senior year of high school or senior year of college are just missing the things that make those years special. And I did that. And there are definitely things to look forward to and to anticipate. So I'm not saying don't have any planning, but I think it's balancing the future with the joys of today, not letting tomorrow eclipse that.
Such a wise, good answer. I'm like, I shouldn't even follow that, but I will. So my answer is, because I know you did this and I didn't do this, so it relates, is I regret not studying abroad during college. And I'm now making up for it by like traveling wherever possible. So that's my spin, is because I didn't travel abroad, didn't study abroad through a program in college, I now take every chance I can to study, make sure I'm doing at least an international trip a year personally, while also very fortunately getting to travel for work a few times a year now. Not right now though, because no one's flying, because it's a weird time we're in. But we'll talk about some of your travels. I think I'm gonna ask later, so that's a heads up to you. And I think we'll move on to our next question. Yeah.
Yep. All right. So, Kolby, what surprised you about the industry that you're working in, or what was unexpected to you?
Yeah. I have a few answers to this. I think the first answer. So let's clarify what the industry is, right? Because the industry is quite broad, and that's part of my answer. Is Greyson mentioned he's interested in kind of international politics, affairs, studies. That's what I am also interested in. It's what I studied. It's what I do now. But I am a public affairs consultant that advises companies, clients around the world. One of the main clients that we have is actually the Embassy of the United Arab Emirates, as Greyson mentioned, and we help manage the relationship between the United States and the United Arab Emirates. So it's cool looking at this from a perspective where we're helping two countries work together and talk to each other and learn from each other and introduce people. So that means we would normally be taking groups from the US out to the UAE to have a cultural educational experience, on the reverse, bringing officials, members of the government, members of the media, sports teams from the UAE to the US to learn from counterparts. That's a job I did not know existed, to be very honest. I thought that job only existed with diplomats. When I say diplomats, I mean people who work for the United States government, people who work for the State Department, who work for the Foreign Service. I thought that was their realm, and had no idea that there was a role for, public affairs firms to help advise, another country on how to talk to the United States, how to work in Washington, D.C. Blew my mind, and I think that's why it's been so exciting to learn about that. On that same theme, I think when people think of international affairs and global politics and what those careers could look like, they immediately go to State Department, CIA, United Nations, all fantastic places to work for, by the way. And there are a lot of members and mentors at NSHSS who do work at those places. So come talk to us. I know CIA and State Department, they actually sponsor a ton of our conferences and are great partners for the organization. But you can also work at UPS and Amazon and be a senior public global affairs analyst. I have a friend she's a senior government affairs person at UPS. She's about my age, maybe 2 years my senior, and she got to spend a year in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates working on a project for UPS. But again, things you don't think about. There are careers in global health. There are careers in science and technology in the global space. There is cultural and art diplomacy. One of my friends is doing her PhD in, how countries can use their museums as part of their diplomacy tactics. So the space is a lot wider and much deeper than I knew when I was coming up in college and thinking about what I wanted to do. Out of high school, I was like, I'm going to be a foreign service officer. I'm going to be an FSO. This is it for me. And that's still, I won't lie, it's an interest. We're going to keep it on the table. I know, Greyson, you have aspirations too. But I think what has been nice being in DC and exposed to all these organizations is just there's a lot. There's a lot of options, and your interests probably map onto some of those options in the global space.
Yeah, just kind of to hop on that. Yeah, Kolby covered it very well, talking about our mutual interests. But I think that also extends in a way to your studies. And I talked about this. I transitioned from a poli-sci to global studies, and that seems like a subtle difference, but there's actually that's a whole can of worms. There's some differences there, bringing in different disciplines like economics, sociology, psychology, anthropology, all the ologies together and really analyzing the world. So I would say to our members who are watching this, transitioning from high school to college or in college, don't be afraid to study those things that also seem like out of the box things. I mean, there's a balance. That's my motto. There's always a balance. But we have capstone projects, senior theses at my university. And when you look at the class of global studies capstones that comes out every year, the topics are so diverse. And Kolby, what you were saying reminded me of that, where we have people talking about tourism in Tahiti to my project, which was talking about post-Cold War economics in Eastern Europe. So there's really a really broad applicability in both your studies and in the workplace for this field.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting because it's ever changing. So the latest trends that we understand are going to be, career fields, particularly in the technology space, are being applied to global politics and international work, and there's high value in that. Are related. So we talked about what we're interested in, what we're doing, but now it's the why. So Greyson, why did you decide to pursue, an interest or a potential career in international policy?
Well, I've always been interested in politics. I mean, since I was in third grade.
Everybody look at the posters behind him. Okay, I just want to point that out.
Yeah, yeah. History and politics has been my bread and butter since as early as I can remember. I had the opportunity to meet President George W. Bush early on, and that really kind of just sparked my interest. And I think in the United States, not to bash it, but we sometimes feel that politics, we either go one extreme or the other. Either we're completely disinterested in politics or over interested in politics, where we can't even talk to someone if we're having different political views, unpopular opinion. But I think we all need to be involved in some way, even if it's just how we think about politics and our role in society, the American society, and within the framework of the international system. So when it comes to international policy, a lot of that kind of came from my exposure to global studies in the sense that everything is interconnected. So it's like you look at even US domestic policy over the past couple decades. I would think someone would be hard pressed to find something that isn't related to an international development, because the way our world is with global capitalism, and you have these international organizations like the UN, WHO, World Trade Organization, all of these acronyms, are the countries of the world are so interconnected that it's important to understand how actions of one country, an actor, as we like to call it, affect another actor, and even that's not even government, and that's something that's opened my mind so much. You have these non-state actors, whether it's local, grassroots activism groups or things like that. So I think it's kind of a long-winded answer. I study international policy. I want to be involved in that because I think that is the best level to address the problems that we face in our world, and we face in our everyday lives. And I think it's a great opportunity to really create unity across borders and to learn it. I mean, it's been such an educational experience, as I've said, and we'll talk about through the rest of this conversation.
Yeah, that's great. I really agree. I cannot emphasize enough how I think international policy is just like completely underrated in conversations and thinking, and which it's easy to do, because if you grow up in a place where like folks like typically don't travel, which is like a lot of the country, like you don't know, right? I think what is nice in today's age is like technology has really opened that door, and like you can, and particularly during COVID where we can't travel, I think we're even leaning more into this where there's technology companies that are inventing what they're calling portals, where it's basically just a wall. Imagine a wall, but the entire wall is a video screen, and that video screen is like looking into another part of the world. And that speaks so much to like kind of how technology is advancing, but also like how I think we need to like flip our minds as humans and thinking about like, yes, we're here, we have our surroundings, we have our neighborhoods, but somewhere across in Islamabad or in Delhi, like there's another family having the same moment, but having a completely different lifestyle. But there are unifying themes that are affecting us, things like war that pervades borders, things like climate change, which is not going to be solved within domestic policies and politics. No matter what our Congress decides or doesn't decide in regards to those policies, like the rest of the world also has to come to an agreement. Otherwise, we don't move the needle on these issues. Anyways, Greyson and I can geek out on this all day because we do think it's important. And if you think it's important and are interested, come talk to us. NSHSS will hook it up. But to the question of like why I'm interested in this, I think like Greyson, I knew very early politics was like my thing. I think 6th grade, I can identify a moment where I got to go to Washington, D.C. with my parents, and I was like, boom, this is it. Like, I'm 12 years old, and I know this is where I'm going to end up. I loved the historical monuments. I loved these like really cool looking Greco-Roman buildings that were really impressive. And yeah, it just drew me, and that theme like was consistent. And then in 8th grade, I really got this mapped out. In 8th grade, I got to go to the UN and like met these students from around the world who I still like am in touch with. And actually, my good friend Neelam in the Netherlands, she actually, backing up, that trip we were basically simulating the UN, like Model United Nations, MUN. And today it's cool because I still keep in touch with some of those people. But Neelam from the Netherlands, actually from Curacao, but now in the Netherlands, actually grew up, it's my age, a few years older, and is like a UN delegate now. Like she's living the life. She's living the life that like we were practicing and pretending, but which is so cool. But that moment, I think, being around diplomats and students from around the world that were all interested in these ideas of, I think, globalism and having those conversations between cultures, I knew that the international stuff was interesting to me, and that's why I pursued that. And I think one overarching theme is my dad. Actually, my dad is he's Cambodian. He was born in Cambodia. He was 14 when he had to flee during the genocide that occurred there in the 1970s. He took me when I was 12 that same year. So DC and Cambodia, big year. When I was 12, I got to go to Cambodia and meet like the other parts of my family who I never got to know. And as a 12-year-old, like, you know, really didn't travel outside the US. It was my big first international travel trip. And Cambodia is a very different country from the US. Some folks on here probably don't know like where Cambodia is. That's okay. CNN doesn't know where Cambodia is often too. Look it up. It's in Southeast Asia, next to Vietnam, Thailand, Laos. But it's a very poor country, very different economy, really terrible history that's led to some of those circumstances. All that saying is, when you walk the streets at the time when I was 12, things have changed now, but it was a luxury to have paved roads. It was a luxury to have electricity. It was a luxury to have running toilets, and not the toilets that you'd find perhaps in your house. These things as a 12-year-old made a deep impression, and I knew like I could not unsee these things. I could not unexperience these things. I could also not change that I was a son of a refugee. That had a deep impact to me, and I think it's influenced me to pursue these things. So that's been definitely my kind of guiding light there. Okay, we got a little dark there, so we're gonna lighten things up. Greyson, now that you've seen the work, lifestyle, culture of other countries, how has this affected your worldview? We touched on this, but like maybe you have other thoughts.
Yeah. As I was kind of beginning to say, I think having this outward focus, looking at just beyond your own community, your own background, even your own country, is so enriching. I think, from where I come from, it's you have this field called apologetics, Christian apologetics, and it's knowing why you believe what you believe. And I think regardless of what you believe, it's important to know why. And I think being in college, this is going to do it naturally, and that's one of the great things about college. But it's kind of saying, here's what I believe. It's almost stepping outside of yourself and seeing, this is who I am, and why am I like that? Not in a bad way, not in a judgmental way at all, but just saying, here is my life up to now, and there are other people, other countries, entire societies that are different, and what do I think about that? So I think having this international focus and wanting to go into diplomacy has really helped me begin to kind of understand myself better by trying to understand others. Just being able to relate on whether it's politics, whether it's food, or just just being around, walking the streets of Paris. It's helping you understand more of where you come from as well as where others come from, and it's mind blowing in many ways, over and over and over again.
Yeah, 100% agree. Like adding on, I think cultures is so interesting, and the only way to like experience that, aside from having like micro communities in the US where the nice thing about the US, right? One of the nice things, one of the many nice things, is that we are a very diverse culture. You have communities. Some places are more diverse than others, but it exists. Even if you travel the United States, you're going to see folks who have different histories, have different cultures, are immigrants, are refugees. You get that. But I will say that getting to travel outside of the boundaries of the United States and going to other regions of the world that are more complicated is an experience that is unparalleled. You got to do it, and it's possible. Like for me, like my parents really couldn't, I think pay for me to travel via school or things like that. But like I worked part-time jobs, I saved up, I was teaching tennis, refereeing soccer, all these things because it was important to me. And I wanted to kind of break my conceptual outside of the US and outside of Cambodia, which I knew. But in learning these things, I think having curiosity and understanding that like I do not understand, and understanding that I do not know all that there is out to the world. It's you can read things and understand that bad things have happened or good things have happened, but to go there and experience and eat other people's food and listen to their music and hear the stories, it's an amazing thing. I think the biggest thing I've taken away is having this empathy for the human condition and just other people's experiences. I think we are very fortunate in the US to be geographically situated between two countries that we haven't had real conflict with since, I don't know, 1848, the Mexican-American War, I think, right? Like Canada and Mexico, they're not unfriendly neighbors. We're very friendly. You know, we have trade disputes every now and then, but we figure it out. There are other places in the world where the neighborhood's a lot tougher, and like that has implications about your access to food and water and your ability to buy things at the store for a reasonable price. But it's hard to grasp that concept without, I think, going and seeing and choosing to study that. So, and to Grace's point, no one should feel bad about not knowing these things, but having the curiosity and the, I think, drive to ask questions and to challenge one's perspective on the world is really important. And that's been, I think, my biggest blessing and takeaway from having had these experiences is that that's just like how I think now. Yeah. Okay. I think we're nearing the last question, and then we'll like go real casual and just ask whatever's at the top of our head.
Yeah.
Grace, when you travel abroad, what do you miss the most about the United States?
Well, I have to, in full disclosure, Kolby was saying earlier, I've had the chance to study a bit in Germany, in Berlin, in Leipzig, Nuremberg, and then also in Northern Ireland, in Derry, Londonderry. I've also gone to France and hopefully Greece next year. So if you know your geography a little bit, it's okay. I don't really. Those are European countries, and they're Western European countries. So in some ways there is not a huge culture shock quite as much, because just with different things, whether it's NATO, whether it's UN, different processes of just travel, the cultures can be somewhat homogenous or similar. But I will say one thing I have noticed is I think just interaction on a normal street. Kind of in the US, we have people maybe too much, but just going out of their way, like, hey, how are you doing? Or whether it's a store with kind of customer service, and something that's been interesting. It's different. So I wouldn't, I think it's always enriching to go to another country. So I don't necessarily see it as, oh, well, here's America and everything else is trying to measure up to it. But as great and as much as I love America, but that's definitely something I've noticed, kind of going from country to a different country is kind of just the norms about interactions, to use some undergraduate sociology language.
Yeah, that's interesting. This question is tough for me because I don't know if I miss anything about America, like appreciative, but I think like you, I'm very appreciative to be in some place like I'm just not familiar with. And let's be real. I mean, this is my opinion, so I won't generalize, but like the food is often better in other places. Like I'm about it. So like I'm in Thailand, I'm eating Thai food. I'm in Bolivia, I'm having like local cuisine. Like I'm just very happy person on the food scene when I'm traveling. That's been great. I think perhaps it makes me think about what I perhaps take for granted or don't think about when I'm like having been born in the States. So, if we look at Cambodia, which is a country I have a deep affinity for, it's you appreciate things that I get to go run outside. I have a weekend. I don't have to work the weekends. I have a job that's allowing me to support myself. I don't have to rely on my family. I don't have to. My family's also has had jobs, but I think like there are small things that I think we automatically receive in the States, including the right to vote. So I think it just depends on like what country we're like country or set of countries or regions or democracies or non-democracies that we're comparing to. So that's what makes it tough. But yeah, let's stick with there's something to appreciate everywhere we go. How's that? Okay, we're gonna do a kind of lightning round of questions that Greyson or I have not asked each other or prepared for, so this could be interesting. And if they're bad answers, the team will just edit them out, and we'll see how this goes. So, Greyson, you've mentioned a few times about traveling to a few places, Germany, Northern Ireland, France, hopefully Greece sometime soon. You've had the opportunity to study in these places. Like, can you give me like a favorite in our audience? What's a favorite experience you've had? Something like you've really walked away from that experience, you're like, wow, this was great. Maybe something you learned.
Ooh, boy, this is a nice start to the lightning round. I think one more light moment. I've had some like really deep experiences, but to keep things light, I had the opportunity to spend July 4th last year atop the Eiffel Tower, and yeah. So I mean, you have the connections there between Gustave Eiffel and America. You have the Statue of Liberty, and there's, I mean, Eiffel's work is all across the world. But I think that was just a cool moment to, you know, even though I wasn't even in the United States at the time, I was able just to appreciate my being an American, but also interacting with people, you know, speaking French and a host of other languages which I couldn't even begin to understand, as we were packed in at the precipice of, or the top of the Eiffel Tower. So I think that was just a cool moment. This literally international symbol that is the Eiffel Tower, and just being able to say, here's the world. I'm looking over one of the most famous cities on earth, and you know, I'm here, and this is my place in that world. It was, yeah, it was definitely a cool moment.
That's a good story. I also have a Paris moment. I have two that are like stuck in my memory. I thought the United States knew fireworks and like did fireworks well, but let me tell you, I was in Europe for a few weeks. I'd saved money. This is right after I graduated university, and I was about to go start my job at DC. So I'd taken like 6 weeks to go do this. One of the stops, like 7 stops. One of the stops was Paris, and we liked it so much, just hanging out, like talking to people, going to museums, doing the thing. That we extended our trip to stay for Bastille Day, which is the Independence Day for France. And let me tell you, the French know how to do fireworks. So same situation. I'm not on top of the Eiffel Tower, but now I'm staring at the Eiffel Tower on a lawn of 1 million people. I'm like climbing over this German couple to find seats on the grass. They're very nice. They share some snacks. And this fireworks show was like the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, so I highly recommend everybody go to France, Bastille Day, Paris, July 14th, I think it's the date. We're gonna double check. We're gonna Google check me later. Great moment. On the opposite side of that, I think the day of, I also got stuck in a riot between like police and protesters. So, you know, the great French democracy is still happening right there. We don't need to go too much into that, but I survived, obviously. I'm here.
Nice. So kind of maybe going in a semi-similar vein, what is like one time that you were abroad and it was like a really awkward experience that you were just like completely speechless?
Yeah, this happened
This is a conversation here.
Oh man, this is really recent. It was awkward, but it also was like I was just very nervous. I was sweating. It was also hot out. So my last work experience, I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it. We're going to talk about it. Okay, so I'm taking this group. I'm in charge of facilitating this group to see different meetings and stuff like that. And I am at the last minute in our itinerary, we got added an appointment that we really didn't know about. And the appointment was to go have an audience with the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, who is like the de facto like head of the nation. And we're like, okay, this is gonna be cool. We really don't know what we're getting into. It's supposed to be at one site, but this is the one day of the year it's on another site, and we have to be like escorted in, and like we spent an hour in the bus like circling this like fort-like structure, like this ancient fort where the audience is going to be happening. And we're like, what is going on? Eventually we get out of the bus, we're walking up, and we walk into the center of this fort, which is the original fort of Abu Dhabi, where the sheikhs, the leaders of the nation, kind of made decisions from, took audiences from. And part of that culture is any member, any citizen can come before the leader and kind of like talk about the problems and like ask for help, whether it's like, you know, irrigation issues or like city infrastructure, zoning, you know, things have changed now, the different requests have changed, but that still happens almost on a weekly basis in many places in the Middle East. And so we're here, and I thought we'd just get to sit in the audience, and then we get pulled up into a processional line, and I realize we're now in a handshake line, and like we're heading straight for the Crown Prince. And I'm like panicking because like this is my first work trip. I'm not supposed to technically be in any pictures, but the whole thing's being filmed. There's video cameras everywhere. There's photographers, there's security, there's staff running around. And I tried to like calmly move myself out of the line. And the ambassador's chief of staff like grabs me. She's like, you're not leaving the line. Like you have to do this. I said, I cannot do this. Like I'm gonna get in trouble at work. She's like, I'll cover for you. I'm like, okay. So we went up and I had my moment, and he, you know, he says, I don't know what he says. He's probably thank you for being here, and I probably mumble something back, but I'm probably sweating bullets. Everyone's staring. There's a video camera right there. I'm thinking I'm gonna get fired when I get back. Long story short, I had the moment. I did not get fired. Hopefully I won't get in trouble about telling it here, but that was an awkward exchange for me because I didn't really know what to do.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, we'll figure out if the next time I come on, if I still have a job with the place I have now. Okay, so let's go to a lighter topic. Let's transition. We'll decide if we have to cut that later. Greyson, tell me about a favorite moment with NSHSS, you know, whether it's in general with NSHSS or on college council, student council.
Boy. Well, I think I don't know if well, I'll go ahead and just repeat it. So high school graduation, as I said, just having that kind of that instant where I see someone else in my graduating class, you know, high school senior, and this was even I went to online high school at Liberty University Online Academy. So our high school graduation was literally with students from around the country, and we were meeting at Liberty University. So I knew absolutely no one, and I think, well, maybe one person. So we're sitting here in this gym right off campus, and I don't know anyone. And then we're all there in our gowns, we're ready to do our ceremony, and I see this guy with the stole and the little medallion that NSHSS has, and again, it was just that moment of identification that made me think, I'm part of NSHSS. And so that was kind of a genesis moment. So not quite when I, you know, was fully part of the society yet, but just a time when I could just that realization that this was something I was a part of, and I've, you know, that stuck with me through the years and has continued to come to my mind as I've interacted with various staff people, great staff team at HQ, and fellow members. It's been great.
Very cool. Very cool. That's a good moment. I can visualize it. You do a good job describing.
How about you?
So many, which is interesting because again, like I didn't have that kind of traditional high school member experience or even in college, but in a very short time, the last 5 years, just had a ton of moments. I'm really thankful to have had really great mentors from like the HQ team, past and present, that have been really great to the fellows and to just like our wider community. But let's see. Okay, I got two. One is, it's my first like conference where I was presenting, and we were doing this workshop, and everything was like just like not going right. Like everything was running behind. My really quick, the experiment I was doing was like a team building experiment. Some of you probably heard of the, I don't even know what it's called now, the marshmallow challenge, where you have to like use spaghetti and like tape and like marshmallows to build the tallest tower. And the whole thing is about like how you work together as a team, how you communicate. It's really not how like tall but we had prizes for the tallest tower because competition. But everything was going wrong. The tape wasn't working. I was getting kind of side-eyed by the parents because the tape wasn't sticky enough. I'm like, that's not the point. I didn't say that, but I was trying to keep my cool. I was so worried that this is going to be the last time that I was going to be invited to do a workshop or speak in public, because I just felt like I was blowing this. But we made it. We made it through. Some of the towers stood. Most of them failed, which is the whole point. And I just remember a few students and parents coming up and being like, honestly, I know that you look like you're panicked. I'm like, okay, I got to work on that. But this was really good, and you need to know that. And I think for me, I do need affirmation from different places, whether it's mentors or random strangers. So I deeply appreciated that. More so, I appreciated that NSHSS, let me come back per se, and let me keep working with students, which is what I really love to do. Second memory, which is non-NSHSS related, but related, is our fellows group. Our board is very close. We travel to see each other because we're based, I'm in DC, Morgan's New York, Lauren's in Arlington, but I never see her, so I feel like I have to travel to see her. April's in Chicago. We got people in Texas, so we're really spread out. But we travel to see each other, and we also travel for each other's occasions. So there was a birthday, it was Morgan's birthday in Nashville, and we just had a fantastic time. It was the fellows crew that was there. But that would not have happened. That unofficial business and activity would not have happened if we had not met. We were complete strangers before, and we met through NSHSS. And to me, that just speaks to the power of the relationships you can form, the friendships that you have. So yeah, always thankful. And we have weekly calls now during COVID, Thursdays, 10 o'clock p.m., because some of us are farther west, where we kind of debrief on our week. And sometimes we talk NSHSS, but a lot of time it's just about how things are going.
Yeah, so kind of on that note, since COVID has made many interesting changes in our lives, what's one thing that you think you may continue doing after hopefully COVID goes away, at least for a little while? Is there something that you've been doing, amidst telecommuting, things like that, that you say, you know what, I want this to go, even when we can go outside of doors, as DC's slowly opening up, as my state hopefully will open up soon. Is there something that you'd like to continue doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I had this written down. We did not coordinate this, but it was what is something you learned during COVID about yourself that you would like to, so Greyson, we're on the same page. It's a good question. I think that number one, what I hope for our professional society, our professional circles, is that employers, and this is going to matter for all of us, because all of you, all the audience members who are going to be, seeking a career at some point. And I hope that when you get to that career, that your employers, my employers, Greyson's future employers, really understand how effective people can be with having a more flexible work schedule, being able to telework. Of course, in-person interaction cannot be replaced in so many ways. There is value to that. And in the conduct of diplomacy also, which we've talked about, and these opportunities to take people to other countries, that you can't replace that. But there is so much that we do day to day where that flexibility to work from home sometimes, whether it's because we have different circumstances in our life, people in our family are sick, different life events are happening, you just need a mental health day to work from home instead of in the office. I hope that flexibility continues. I hope that for my workplace. I hope that for everyone's workplace, just because I think it's been good for our collective mental health to understand that. So that's one. Personally, I think, and the reason I think it relates to what I just said is, I am very much a person that has a calendar and it's full, and if there's a day that's blank, I get very nervous about it, and I'm I gotta fill it. If I got a Friday evening blank, I'm what is this travesty? What am I doing? I feel unaccomplished. And so I definitely have this fever to fill everything up. And so what I have deeply appreciated during this time, and very fortunate that I'm able to work from home and have a job during this, because I have a lot of friends who don't right now, is just slowing down and being more thoughtful and catching up on activities that I normally wouldn't get to do. I'm reading a lot more, but it's definitely been a good opportunity to recenter, to not feel social pressure to be with people or talk to people, not even joining all the Zoom calls that are happening, because even that is space, and that is stress sometimes, that is pressure. You might feel pressure to talk to your family or friends every single day during this. But I would say just the opposite. Like, you need to do what's best for you. And for me, it's been really taking a step back and just appreciating the time that I have with myself, and just kind of learning about myself. I think it's been nice. Yeah. What about, yeah, I was going to ask you the same question. So like, let me flip the question a little bit and maybe we'll wrap up on this. What's the first thing you're going to do post quarantine? When it's safe to do so, like big asterisk there, everybody, okay?
Yeah, definitely. Honestly, I haven't really thought about it too much. You know, I have plans, of course, of one nature or another, but I think probably just hanging out with my friends as soon as possible. I mean, I'm on the border between introvert and extrovert, so you know, I kind of enjoy those me times a little bit more. But I think, yeah, just being able to kind of interact with some of my friends here in the local area. Well, one of them is an EMT up in Kirkland, which is where a lot of the cases happened here in Washington. So probably not him for a little while longer. But but I think just, yeah, hanging out with friends, enjoying the bit of sun that we get here, you know, one in every 365 days. So yeah, I think just hanging out with people actually in person and not over a computer.
One out of every 365 days, but somehow your Washington's better than my Washington. Again, like, let me be able to let that close the debate. I am going to get a haircut, like a real haircut from someone who knows how to cut hair, because I've just been like messing with this and I don't know what's going on, but we're going to wait till it's safe. I agree. Like, I need to see people. I need to be around people. So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, and getting on a plane when it's safe to do so somewhere. I don't really care where. I just want to go somewhere.
Yeah.
That's my plan. I think we're going to wrap up. So, Greyson, you got any like final words for the crew?
No, just thank you, you know, Abby Duke, Leslie Walton, all of the great people at HQ in Atlanta. Just this was a great conversation and learning about each other and continuing to dialogue as our society does.
Yeah, Greyson, it was like great to catch up with you. I thank all the team from NSHSS for making this happen. Thank you all for tuning into this episode of the NSHSS Global Student Voices series. Everyone stay safe. Continue to look at the webinars and programming that NSHSS is putting out. Go to nshss.org, check out the webinars, check out the virtual conferences that will be coming up. There might be a few more panels that we'll be involved in later on. If you have any questions for us, feel free to reach out to the team at nshss.org and they'll redirect the questions to us. Also find us on social. I'm sure either of us is more than happy to chat with you about all the things. So thank you, everybody. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you soon.